The government has taken a firm decision to release Mr. Mandela unconditionally. I am serious about bringing this matter to finality without delay. The government will take a decision soon on the date of his release.
On the 2nd of February 1990, South Africa's political landscape changed dramatically. Head of State F.W. de Klerk and his National Party officials had made up their minds. Veteran freedom fighter Nelson Mandela was finally going home. He had been in jail for nearly 3 decades. Mandela's organization, the African National Congress, and other liberation movements were unbanned.
You all, in the name of peace, democracy and freedom for all.
But as Nelson Mandela prepared for life after prison, Paul Erasmus and his colleagues in law enforcement weren't done yet.
When de Klerk released Mandela, we were given a 4-year plan to work for. And part of this was the populist element in the ANC had to be neutralised. And number 1, of course, was Winnie. Number 2 was Peter Mokaba. Number 3, of course, was Hani.
And that's how Strategic Communications, also known as Stratcom, was established. It was a police unit that worked with unethical journalists to create false narratives against opponents of the apartheid regime. Here's the context. The ANC had been preparing to engage the governing National Party in talks to end apartheid. Influential political figures like Winnie Madikizela-Mandela and a few others were seen by the right wing as being too radical. This is why they were targeted. Some of these details emerged at the Goldstone Commission in 1994, where Paul Erasmus testified about Stratcom's activities.
My function then was to use the soft underbelly that Winnie was the perfect Stratcom machine without even knowing, was her statements. We'll liberate the country with a box of matches and a tyre and a litre of petrol or whatever she said. So I set out to destroy her and pretty much almost did. It was me that put stuff in media across the world about her drunken affairs and the most outrageous stuff. Her and Zinzi sitting in the car drinking it up, and listen to this one, Dali Mapofu of the EFF joining in the party, and sex on the back seat of the car. And I just churned this stuff out in huge amounts.
Are you saying this was made up? This didn't happen?
Of course it didn't happen. Let's start with the most serious thing with Stompie Seipei. Jerry Richardson went to his death and was convicted of the murder of Stompie, not Winnie. Now, without sounding like I'm defending Winnie, I've always just maintained one thing. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there when Stompie Seipei died or was murdered. But I do know one thing, is that I spread that story and embellished it. It was great for propaganda, which is Stratcom. Stratcom is misinformation or disinformation. Winnie was fantastic. Everything she did, by her nature, Winnie was perfect for it because she's a contentious person.
Do you regret doing it?
Very much so. I know I did a terrible, terrible damage. I'm aware that Winnie made more enemies in the ANC because of her support for me and her friendship with white people than one would readily believe. Winnie was never the reverse racist. Encountered a lot of white people amongst her closest friends and allies. I don't have to talk about Hazel Crane, but if you go back in this struggle, the old white leftists, Winnie was their biggest admirer. I really regret that because eventually I met her and something of a victim of my own propaganda. I thought she would probably kill me as well, but she didn't. She forgave me and sympathized with me and appreciated my honesty, for which I'm very grateful to this day.
Paul left the police force in 1993, a year before the collapse of apartheid. What kind of person were you at the time? What was your state of mind?
I was stress-ridden. I'd already started to receive treatment then for post-traumatic stress. I was still in the security branch, but not in Johannesburg, down in the Southern Cape. I was head of technical services.
Once a creative writer who wanted to tell stories through poetry, now a former apartheid foot soldier whose CV includes torturer, bomber, propagandist, and assassin. Even his wife couldn't stand living with him. She packed her bags and left.
The ultimate thing in our marriage was my amnesty application. I couldn't type at the time, and I wrote it in longhand and she typed it. Look, I was even shocked. I couldn't believe that, and eventually applied for amnesty for something like 500 offences. I can only hang my head in shame is something of a South African record. 500 offences. I never joined the police to become a criminal, but that's what happened.
Are you regarding yourself as having become a criminal?
Most absolutely. Eventually we reached the stage where you couldn't distinguish between what was right or wrong. I can tell you a very telling story of a very conservative Afrikaans guy that I worked with. And he was a lot older than me. He'd been in the dog squad. Eventually ended up being sent to security branch in Joburg. And I watched this guy fall apart. He went with us night after night to go and attack people's homes and that, and started to drink heavily, and I can't remember, but he was sort of my partner and we shared a vehicle. He got drunk the one night and he had tears in his eyes and he said to me, Paul, he said, I can't do this job anymore. He said, I hate these communists more than anybody else. He said, but I didn't join the police force to break the law. He was a real old, not highly educated. I think he had a standard 6 education. Joined the police those years for lack of anything else to do, but he took it seriously. He was a good uniform cop, and Yari was at night shooting up the one incident that he was with. We used the 12-gauge shotgun and shot the suspect. In fact, it was Mrs. Helen Joseph. We shot her letterbox to pieces. And this upset him. He said, I didn't join the police force to become a criminal. His drinking got epic. He was kicked out of the security branch when he was hardly functional, and a minor incident between him and an officer. And he said to the guy, hold on a minute, turned around, took out his 9mm and shot himself in front of the old pub. He was one of the many suicides that I referred to, and much of it, in fact, all of it, came from the security branch. His conscience was just beladen. Others didn't commit suicide, they just fell apart. The stress levels were extremely, extremely high.
For more, go to ewn.co.za.